The question came out of nowhere. Henrik was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports. His office flooded with the cold morning light that bounced off the marble floors. The silence was a routine companion in that space, until it was shattered by the soft, trembling voice of a child. "Dad, why did Mom leave me?" It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even curiosity. It was something far worse, longing. Real, aching, innocent longing. Henrik looked up slowly, his eyes locking with a small figure standing by the door. Arthur, 7 years old, all bones and bright eyes, holding his worn-out toy airplane by one wing. That toy had outlived several generations of batteries, glued back together 3 times, and somehow still worked. It was her last gift, the only one. Henrik opened his mouth, then closed it again. He felt as though the air had turned thick, heavy, impossible to breathe. No board meeting, no acquisition, no international scandal had ever disarmed him como aquila simples pagunta. Arthur stepped into the room slowly, like he knew he was walking into forbidden territory. "Mommy liked airplanes, didn't she?" he asked. "Do you think she's still flying somewhere?" The innocence in his tone struck Henrik harder than any accusation could. The boy didn't even sound angry, just lost. He still imagined her as some kind of explorer, a wanderer of skies, maybe an angel. The lie Henrik had allowed to grow over the years was now alive in Arthur's imagination, and it was beautiful and cruel. For 7 years, Henrik had deflected every question, dodged every hint, masked every scar. He'd buried the truth in silence and replaced it with money, tutors, private chefs, robot dogs, and every Lego set ever released. But none of it filled the echo in Arthur's chest, the space shaped like a mother's absence. And now, with just one question, that silence had collapsed. Henrik stood up and walked around the desk, his footsteps slow, deliberate. He knelt in front of his son. "Come here, champ," he whispered, his voice strained. Arthur crawled into his lap like he used to when he was smaller, like the boy he still was in secret. Henrik wrapped his arms around him, and they sat in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that screams. The kind that trembles at the edge of a truth no one wants to say. "Why doesn't she send me birthday cards?" Arthur asked quietly. That one hurt even more, because he had asked the same question himself, countless times over the years, and he had never found a good enough lie to soothe it. Henrik wanted to scream that she was selfish, a ghost, a traitor. But the truth was much heavier than that, and far more complicated. His silence made him a liar too. "She loved you very much, Arthur," Henrik finally said. "She just had her own dreams. She wanted to see the world. And she left to do that." It sounded hollow, even to his own ears, like reading from a script written by someone else. Arthur leaned back slightly, squinting. He was a child but not stupid. "And she didn't want to take me with her?" That question cracked something inside Henrik. He looked away, out the window, toward the skyline of the city that had made him powerful, yet powerless to protect his own son from the ache of abandonment. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people they love, not because they want to, but because they're scared. Henrik realized, too late, that he was talking more about himself than her. The truth was, he still didn't fully understand why she left. One day she was glowing, singing to their baby in the nursery, whispering dreams of future trips and tiny matching backpacks. The next she was gone. No note, no trace. Just a voicemail saying she needed space. Henrik searched the world for her, hired private investigators, hacked passports, questioned friends. Nothing. She had vanished like smoke. And the worst part, he never told Arthur that she didn't abandon just the boy. She abandoned them both. That he was left alone too. And that even with all his millions, all his power, he never figured out where she went, or why. That was the one thing money couldn't fix. A broken heart wrapped in a mystery. But now, with his son's head resting on his chest, asking questions that deserved more than fairy tales, Henrik felt the truth crawling up his throat. He wanted to tell him everything. But part of him was still that young man, paralyzed by a goodbye he never saw coming. "Dad!" Arthur's voice brought him back. "Do you think she thinks about me?" Henrik didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked down at his son, the boy who still believed in mothers who travel and return with stories. And in that moment, Henrik realized something terrifying. If he didn't tell the truth soon, Arthur would create his own version. One that might hurt even more. One that could become permanent. The days that followed were quiet. But inside Henrik's mansion, a tempest raged. Arthur continued to ask about his mother, the question growing heavier each time it left his lips. Henrik found himself walking the corridors late at night, haunted by memories that burned like acid in his chest. Memories of a woman full of light and laughter, who had vanished without warning. He remembered the first time he held Arthur in his arms, a fragile, perfect bundle of life, and how his heart swore to protect him from all harm. Yet here he was, failing the boy in the most essential way. The truth was a shadow that darkened every moment. Henrik knew he was not just a father but a prison guard to secrets that threatened to destroy the fragile bond he had with his son. Every lie he had told to shield Arthur from pain had created an unbridgeable canyon between them. And now, with each question, that canyon widened. Henrik wondered if his silence was a protection or a slow poison, poisoning their lives with doubt and loneliness. The weight of that silence was unbearable. He felt the loneliness of a man surrounded by everything and yet deprived of what mattered most. The truth that could heal or break them forever. One night, Henrik sat alone in his office, the city lights flickering like distant stars through the glass walls. Arthur was asleep upstairs, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the calm facade of their lives. Henrik's hands trembled as he reached for a drawer locked for years, a drawer he had vowed never to open. Inside lay the remnants of a past too painful to face. The letters, photographs, and secrets that might explain everything but could also shatter what little peace remained. With a deep breath, he pulled out a yellowed envelope, sealed with a delicate rose emblem. The handwriting was unmistakable, his wife's. A letter she had left behind, never sent, never read. His heart pounded as he unfolded the fragile paper, reading words soaked with fear, love, and desperation. Words that told a story Henrik had refused to believe. A story of threats, sacrifice, and a promise to return that had never come true. The truth was no longer just a mystery. It was a confession hidden in ink and paper, waiting to be heard. As he read, the years of pain and anger dissolved into something new, understanding mingled with sorrow, a fragile thread of hope beginning to weave through the darkness. The letter spoke of shadows lurking behind the glitz and glamour of the corporate world Henrik ruled, a darkness his wife had stumbled upon while working as a lowly employee. She had uncovered secrets that powerful men wanted buried, secrets that put her life and their sons in danger. She wrote of sleepless nights, whispered threats, and the unbearable choice to vanish for their safety. Henrik's eyes blurred with tears as he imagined her torn between maternal love and fear for their lives. The woman who had left was not selfish but a silent warrior fighting battles he hadn't known existed. For years, Henrik had mourned an absence he had blamed on abandonment, but the letter revealed a sacrifice he had never imagined. Arthur was not the son of a woman who fled. He was the child of a mother who had fought in shadows, a mother whose love was boundless even in absence. The weight of this revelation crushed Henrik, but it also ignited a fierce resolve. He had to protect his son and honor the truth that had been buried too long. The realization changed everything. The woman he thought he had lost was, in fact, still fighting in her own way, and it was time for them to fight together. The next morning, Henrik sat across from Arthur at the breakfast table, the letter folded neatly in his jacket pocket. The boy's eyes searched his father's face for answers, for something real, for a flicker of hope. Henrik knew the moment of reckoning had come. He reached out, taking Arthur's small hand in his own, and spoke with a voice trembling between strength and vulnerability. "There's something you need to know, something about your mother." Arthur's grip tightened. The air between them thickened with anticipation and fear. Henrik's mind raced, trying to find the right words to explain a world far too complex for a child, yet honest enough to carry the weight of truth. He chose to tell a story of bravery, sacrifice, and love that defied absence. Arthur listened wide-eyed, absorbing every word like a lifeline. And in that moment, something shifted. A bridge began to form across the chasm of silence and misunderstanding. Henrik realized that honesty, even when painful, was the only path to healing. For the first time in years, the walls between them began to crumble, brick by brick, with nothing but love as their mortar. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere in the mansion changed. Arthur asked fewer questions but held on to the story his father had told him, a story that planted seeds of hope and understanding in his young heart. Henrik watched his son more closely, seeing the traces of his mother in his smile, his curiosity, and his courage. But the letter remained a secret between them, a fragile truth waiting for the right time to be shared fully. Henrik spent nights researching, reaching out to old contacts, and piecing together fragments of the mystery his wife had left behind. He discovered allies, hidden enemies, and a world that was darker and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And through it all, his love for Arthur grew fiercer, more protective, more determined. He knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would fight to bring the mother back to their lives, or at least to their hearts. This battle was no longer just about wealth or power. It was a fight for family, for truth, and for the chance to heal wounds time had only made deeper. If this story touched your heart and stirred something deep inside, you're not alone. There are many stories like Arthur's, tales of love, sacrifice, and mystery that deserve to be heard. If you want to hear more stories that reach into the soul and don't let go, subscribe now. This channel is a home for every broken heart searching for hope, every lost soul craving a happy ending. Click subscribe and join us as we uncover the truth hidden in shadows, the love waiting behind every goodbye, and the miracles that happen when we refuse to give up. Don't miss what comes next. It might just change the way you see love forever. The days following Henrik's confession felt like walking through a fog neither of them could clear. Arthur, once a child adrift in the absence of a mother's love, now carried the weight of a story far greater than his years should bear. His eyes, wide and questioning, flickered between hope and pain, the kind of pain that comes when innocence is peeled back too quickly. Henrik watched him closely, noting every hesitation, every glance toward the empty chair that once might have held the woman they both longed for. The letter, now folded carefully in a wooden box beneath Henrik's bed, was a constant reminder of promises broken and battles fought in silence. Yet, despite the heavy truths, something in Arthur began to bloom, a resilience inherited from a mother who had fought shadows for his sake. Henrik found himself telling stories at night, not just of their family but of courage and survival, weaving a tapestry of strength from threads of sorrow. But beneath it all lurked a gnawing fear, that the forces which had torn their family apart might still be watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Henrik's nights grew restless as he delved deeper into the secrets his wife had uncovered. With the help of trusted allies from his vast network, he pieced together fragments of a conspiracy that reached far beyond corporate rivalry. Dark deals, whispered threats, and betrayals whispered through the corridors of power painted a picture of danger more immediate than he had imagined. Every new discovery tightened the invisible noose around his family, turning the luxurious mansion into a fortress under siege. Arthur, though young, sensed the tension that hung thick like smoke in the air. Henrik tried to shield him, but the child's sharp intuition was not so easily fooled. One evening Arthur asked, "Dad, will they ever find us?" The question hit Henrik like a punch to the gut. How could he reassure a boy whose mother had vanished into the shadows to protect him? The answer was buried deep in his heart, wrapped in a vow he had yet to voice. No matter what, he would fight to bring her back, or at least bring peace to their fractured family. As the days blurred into nights filled with encrypted calls and whispered meetings, Henrik's resolve hardened. He refused to let the past remain a cage. Instead, he transformed his pain into purpose, mobilizing resources and allies to track every lead. The mansion became a command center, screens flashing with data, maps marked with clues, and voices strategizing battles Henrik had never wanted but now embraced. Arthur, growing braver with every passing day, joined him in small ways, tracing routes on maps, asking questions that pierced the veil of mystery. Yet, the biggest battle was internal. Henrik wrestled with guilt, anger, and hope. Guilt for years lost, anger at the faceless enemies who had torn their family apart, and hope, fragile but fierce, that one day the woman who had disappeared would return. The night Henrik found a cryptic message hidden in an old photograph was the moment everything changed. The message was brief but clear. "I'm coming home." It was a spark in the darkness, a promise that shattered silence and reignited the fight. Arthur's world shifted with that message. Suddenly, the empty spaces in his life felt less hollow. His dreams were no longer just of a mother lost but of a reunion that could heal. Henrik saw the boy's smile return, timid but real, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. They started preparing, not just emotionally but physically. Security tightened around their home, and plans were laid for every possible scenario. But amidst the practicalities, Henrik and Arthur shared moments of fragile joy. They built paper airplanes together, echoing the toy that had once been the last gift from a mother, now closer than ever in heart. Each fold, each flight was a silent prayer for her safe return. The house, once cold and full of shadows, now hummed with cautious hope. But Henrik knew the road ahead was perilous. The same shadows that had chased her before were not gone. They lurked still, waiting, watching, ready to strike. This was no fairy tale. This was survival. This was love tested by fire. One evening, as rain hammered against the tall windows, Henrik and Arthur sat side by side, the letter spread open between them. Arthur traced the delicate script with small fingers, absorbing the woman's voice through her words. "She was brave," Arthur whispered. "More than I ever imagined." Henrik nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, she was. And so are you." The moment was both a balm and a wound. Healing through truth but raw with the pain of loss. It was then that Henrik made a silent vow to his son and to himself. No more silence, no more secrets. They would face the future together, whatever it held. Because the greatest love is the one that survives the darkest nights and still burns bright at dawn. The promise of return was no longer just a hope. It was their mission, their heartbeat, their unbreakable bond. As the weeks unfolded, Henrik's search led him to unexpected allies. Old friends of his wife who had kept her secrets safe. They shared stories of her courage and whispered of a hidden refuge where she might be waiting, protected but trapped by forces beyond their control. Each piece of information was a step forward, but also a reminder of how dangerous the path was. Henrik prepared Arthur for the truth that their journey might be long and fraught with pain. Yet in the boy's eyes, Henrik saw a fierce determination that mirrored his own. They were no longer victims but warriors of a story still being written, a story of love that refused to die. The mansion's walls, once prisons of silence, now echoed with plans, hope, and the steady beat of two hearts ready to fight for what was lost. If you're moved by this story and want to stay with us through every twist, turn, and emotional moment, hit subscribe. Join a community that believes in love's power to heal and in the strength found in truth. Don't just watch. Be part of the journey, the fight, and the hope. Click subscribe now and turn on notifications, because what comes next will shake your soul and remind you that even in the darkest times, love can light the way. This story isn't over yet, and neither is the hope that binds a father, a son, and a mother separated by shadows but united by an unbreakable bond. What kind of story would you like to watch here on this channel? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice shapes every tale we tell. Henrik and Arthur's story is just one thread in a tapestry of love, loss, and courage. But what if the next story was yours? What if it held the secrets you need to hear or the hope you've been searching for? As Henrik leaned back in his chair that night, staring out at the city lights that never slept, he knew that every person watching carried their own battles, their own shadows to face. And just like him and Arthur, they needed more than silence. They needed connection, understanding, and a spark of hope to hold on to. The question wasn't just about what story would come next, but about what stories were waiting to be discovered inside each heart that tuned in. The comments section isn't just a place to talk. It's where we begin to heal together, where your story becomes part of this family, this journey. Henrik's world had shifted in ways he never imagined. The fragile hope ignited by a simple message had blossomed into a fierce determination to uncover the truth and reunite his family. But the shadows lurking in the corners of their lives were more dangerous than ever. He couldn't help but wonder, was his wife truly safe? Was she waiting for them? Or was she caught in a trap that tightened with each passing day? The mansion's walls felt both sanctuary and cage, the silence between father and son heavy with unspoken fears and dreams. Arthur, though young, sensed the gravity of the situation. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, he would whisper to the empty room, "Mom, come home." Those words hung in the air, fragile and powerful, a plea that echoed through the vast emptiness. Henrik held his son close, feeling the raw ache of a father's love. Desperate, protective, and relentless. Their fight was far from over, but now it was shared, and that made all the difference. The search led Henrik to a forgotten place. A small coastal town where his wife had once dreamed of a peaceful life, far from corporate battles and hidden dangers. The locals spoke in hushed tones of a woman who had disappeared without a trace but left behind whispers of kindness and courage. Henrik traced her footsteps through dusty streets and salt-tinged air, each step stirring memories and hopes intertwined. He imagined her walking these paths, fighting invisible enemies, protecting Arthur from afar. The realization was both heartbreaking and inspiring. She had sacrificed everything to keep their son safe, even if it meant living in exile. As Henrik stood by the ocean's edge, watching waves crash against jagged rocks, he vowed to bring her back, not just to their mansion, but into their lives, to heal the wounds time had carved and to rebuild a family fractured but unbroken. Back at home, Arthur grew restless with questions. His imagination filled the silence with stories of adventure and reunion, of a mother who would return stronger than ever. Henrik did his best to nurture that hope, telling bedtime stories woven with courage and love. Yet, the truth remained a fragile secret, guarded like a precious gem. The bond between father and son deepened, forged in shared pain and dreams. They were two souls navigating a world filled with shadows, but also with light. A light that came from love, resilience, and the unspoken promise that no matter the darkness, they would face it together. Every smile from Arthur, every hesitant question, was a reminder that the story was far from over. And that made the fight worth everything. One night, as Henrik reviewed old files and encrypted messages, a new clue emerged. A voice recording left by his wife, hidden in a safe place she trusted only him to find. The recording was brief but powerful, filled with hope and warnings, a mother's voice reaching across the years. "If you're hearing this," she said, "know that I love you both beyond words. The path is dangerous, but I am fighting. Hold on to each other, and never lose hope." Henrik's hands trembled as he listened, tears streaming down his face. The recording was more than a message. It was a lifeline, proof that she was alive, that their love endured despite distance and danger. Arthur, awakened by his father's quiet sobs, crawled into his lap, sensing the weight of the moment. Together, they held on to the promise in those words, a promise that would carry them through the darkest nights. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with peril and sacrifice. But Henrik and Arthur were no longer alone. The story they shared with this channel's community had created a network of hope, a family bound not by blood alone but by the courage to face darkness together. Every comment, every share, every subscriber was part of this fight, a reminder that no one is truly lost when love is the compass. As the sun rose over the city, Henrik looked out the window with a renewed sense of purpose. The past had shaped them, but it would not define them. They would write their own ending, one filled with truth, reunion, and the unbreakable power of love. If you want to be part of this story, to walk this path with Henrik and Arthur, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. Your support keeps these stories alive, giving voice to those who need it most. And remember, your story matters here. Leave your thoughts, your questions, and your own tales of love and courage in the comments. Together, we build a family stronger than any shadow. Because here, every goodbye carries a promise, and every silence is just the start of a new chapter. Subscribe now, and let's write the future one story at a time. The night air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant hum of city life beyond the mansion's walls. Henrik sat alone in his dimly lit study, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face like a ghost emerging from the shadows. He was poring over files, encrypted emails, and digital footprints that hinted at a deeper betrayal than he had imagined, one that clawed at the very foundation of his trust and threatened to shatter the fragile hope he had clung to. Just when he thought he was piecing together the puzzle of his wife's disappearance, he uncovered a name that sent a cold wave down his spine, a name tied not to a stranger but to someone close, someone he had trusted implicitly. His breath caught in his throat as he realized that the darkness surrounding his family was not only external but had roots buried deep inside his own world. The sense of betrayal was suffocating, an invisible hand tightening around his chest, squeezing with relentless cruelty. Henrik's mind raced, torn between disbelief and the desperate need to confront a truth so brutal it threatened to consume him whole. Every click of the mouse felt like peeling back a layer of skin, raw and painful, but necessary. The more he dug, the clearer it became. His wife's disappearance was no accident, no random tragedy. It was orchestrated by those closest to him, driven by greed, envy, and a thirst for power that knew no limits. Arthur, oblivious to the storm brewing in his father's world, was growing in ways that made Henrik both proud and heartbroken. The boy's resilience was a mirror of the mother he had never known, a silent testament to a love that transcended absence. Yet, Henrik could see the toll the secrets and lies were taking on Arthur's innocent heart. The nights when the boy asked questions about the shadows that haunted their home, Henrik's responses were careful but faltered, revealing cracks in the armor he had built around their fragile family. "Why did Mom leave us, Dad? Will she ever come back?" The pain behind those words was unbearable, a dagger twisting deeper with each unanswered question. Henrik realized that the truth was no longer a distant hope. It was an urgent necessity. But revealing it meant risking everything. The betrayal he had uncovered implicated allies, people who had woven themselves into their lives like trusted friends, now revealed as puppeteers of pain. Henrik wrestled with his conscience. Protect Arthur from a truth too heavy or risk shattering his world to give him a chance at healing. The choice was agonizing, but one thing was clear. Secrets could no longer hold them hostage. The mansion, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage closing in on them. Every hallway echoed with memories and unanswered questions, every shadow a reminder of the enemy within. Henrik fortified their security, hiring discreet guards and installing advanced systems, but the real threat was invisible. Whispers of conspiracy and deception that twisted reality into a labyrinth with no clear exit. The revelation of betrayal shattered the fragile peace, turning friends into suspects and allies into shadows. Henrik's trust eroded, replaced by a cold vigilance that left him restless and consumed. Yet, amidst the paranoia, his resolve hardened. He would expose the truth, no matter the cost. For Arthur. For the wife who had vanished into darkness to protect them. For the family that refused to be torn apart. But the path ahead was fraught with danger. Henrik knew that pulling on these threads could unravel not just their lives but entire empires built on lies. The stakes were higher than ever, and the enemy was closer than he dared admit. One evening, as Henrik prepared to confront the betrayer hidden in plain sight, a sudden knock shattered the silence. Arthur, clutching his favorite stuffed animal, appeared at the door, eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. "Dad, can we talk?" The moment was tender yet heavy with unspoken urgency. Henrik nodded, ushering Arthur inside and closing the door against the night's cold. The boy's voice trembled as he asked about the mother he barely remembered but deeply missed. Henrik's heart broke anew, but he steeled himself to bridge the chasm of years with the truth he had so long avoided. He began to share the story, not the sanitized version, but the raw, painful truth of sacrifice, betrayal, and love. As words spilled out, Arthur's eyes glistened with tears, understanding blooming through the pain. This was their turning point, the moment where silence gave way to honesty, and their fractured bond began to heal. But even as hope flickered, the shadows outside their door grew darker, threatening to snuff out the fragile light they had ignited. The following days were a whirlwind of action and emotion. Henrik mobilized every resource at his disposal, from legal experts to private investigators, determined to dismantle the conspiracy piece by piece. Arthur, though young, was a beacon of courage, absorbing lessons in resilience and justice. The father-son duo became an unstoppable force, driven by love and the burning desire to reclaim their stolen future. Yet, every victory revealed deeper layers of deceit, darker secrets that tested their resolve. Henrik discovered that the betrayal reached the highest echelons of his business empire. Trusted partners who had orchestrated the downfall of his wife to seize control. The realization was devastating, but it fueled his determination. He was not just fighting for a lost family. He was fighting to reclaim his honor and dismantle a web of corruption that threatened to engulf everything. Arthur watched his father with awe, understanding that true strength was born from pain and perseverance. Together, they prepared for the final battle, knowing that the road ahead was perilous but that surrender was not an option. Amidst this turmoil, a mysterious figure emerged. A woman claiming to have known Henrik's wife intimately and to hold the key to her whereabouts. Her arrival was both a blessing and a complication, shrouded in secrecy and suspicion. She spoke of hidden safe houses, coded messages, and a resistance fighting against the forces that had torn their family apart. Henrik was cautious but desperate. Every lead was precious, every whisper a potential lifeline. The woman's knowledge offered hope, but also revealed the complexity of the web they were trapped in. Trust was a luxury Henrik could ill afford, yet he could not ignore the possibility that this stranger might be the bridge to the reunion they so desperately sought. Arthur, sensing the gravity of the moment, clung to his father's side, ready to face whatever came next. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything, a reckoning that would test their love, their courage, and their very survival. The climax approached like a storm on the horizon. Henrik, Arthur, and their newfound ally plotted a daring move to expose the betrayers and rescue the woman who had sacrificed everything for their family. The tension was palpable, every moment charged with risk and hope. They navigated shadows and secrets, old alliances crumbling and new ones forged in fire. The mansion that had once been a prison now transformed into a battlefield where love and betrayal collided in a final, desperate act. The lines between friend and foe blurred as truths were revealed and masks fell away. Henrik faced his darkest fears and greatest enemies, fueled by a father's love that refused to be broken. Arthur, though young, stood beside him as a symbol of hope and resilience, a living proof that even the deepest wounds could heal. The moment of truth arrived with breathtaking intensity, setting the stage for a resolution that was as surprising as it was beautiful. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and the first light of dawn broke through the darkness, Henrik and Arthur stood together, changed but unbroken. The betrayal had cut deep, but their love had proven stronger. The mother, long thought lost to shadows, was closer than ever. Her sacrifice no longer a secret but a testament to courage and love beyond measure. Their family was fractured but healing, bound by truths spoken and battles fought. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but hope now lit their path. And as they faced the future, hand in hand, they knew one thing with certainty. Love, in all its messy, painful glory, was the ultimate force that could overcome even the darkest betrayals. The days following the confrontation were heavy with silence and the weight of consequences. Henrik found himself walking through the empty halls of the mansion like a ghost, the echoes of past betrayals reverberating off every polished surface. Arthur's laughter, usually a bright spark in the gloom, had become quieter, tinged with an innocence that was both precious and fragile. Henrik realized that healing wasn't a linear path. It was jagged, uneven, and demanded a patience he was only beginning to understand. The revelation of his wife's sacrifice had opened a wound, but also a window to a future where truth wasn't buried beneath layers of lies. Yet, the scars of betrayal ran deep, challenging Henrik's ability to trust, not just others but himself. Every decision was scrutinized, every alliance questioned. The fight for justice had shifted to a fight for peace within their own hearts, a battle often invisible but no less fierce. Arthur's presence was the anchor Henrik clung to amidst the storm. The boy's questions became more profound, his understanding of the world deepening beyond his years. "Dad, why do people lie? Why does love sometimes hurt?" These questions pierced Henrik's soul, forcing him to confront the harsh realities of human nature. But they also sparked conversations filled with hope, forgiveness, and resilience. Henrik realized that teaching Arthur about the complexities of love and betrayal was as important as shielding him from pain. Their nightly talks became a sacred ritual, moments where fear was replaced by courage, confusion by clarity. Arthur's innocence was tempered by wisdom, a reminder that even the youngest hearts carry the strength to endure. Henrik saw in his son's eyes a reflection of the mother they both missed, a fierce spirit that refused to be broken by absence or hardship. It was a new beginning, fragile but alive. Meanwhile, Henrik's company was a battlefield in its own right. The exposure of the betrayal had sent shockwaves through the corporate world, shaking alliances and toppling power structures. Henrik navigated this treacherous landscape with a new sense of purpose, determined to cleanse the empire his wife had once believed in. Every board meeting was a war of wills, every negotiation a test of his resolve. Yet, beneath the cutthroat surface, Henrik found unexpected allies, people who had been waiting for someone brave enough to challenge the corrupt status quo. This growing network of support became a beacon, lighting the way through the darkness of corporate deceit. Henrik understood that the fight was not just personal but systemic, a battle for integrity and justice that extended far beyond his family's pain. It was a fight worth every sacrifice. In the quiet moments, Henrik often revisited the voice recording left by his wife, their lifeline through years of uncertainty. Her words echoed in his mind, a steady reminder of love's enduring power. Hold on to each other and never lose hope. Those words became a mantra, a guiding light through the darkest nights. Henrik found strength in the knowledge that their love, though tested by time and trials, remained unbroken. He imagined the day they would be reunited, the moment when the shadows would finally lift, revealing a future built on truth and healing. Until then, he resolved to be both father and protector, weaving a shield of love around Arthur's fragile world. The road was long and uncertain, but with every step, Henrik grew more certain that love's promise was worth fighting for. Arthur, growing bolder with each passing day, began to ask about his mother not just in whispers but with a fierce determination. Where is she really? What is she doing now? These questions challenged Henrik to be honest without breaking the boy's spirit. He shared stories of courage, sacrifice, and hope, painting a picture of a mother who was not just missing but fighting, a warrior hidden in plain sight. Arthur listened, eyes wide, absorbing every word. The boy's resilience became a source of inspiration for Henrik, a reminder that even in absence, love could shape a child's world. Together they built a new narrative, one not defined by loss, but by the enduring strength of their bond. Henrik knew this was the foundation upon which they would rebuild their fractured family. Yet shadows lingered. The mysterious woman who claimed to know Henrik's wife remained an enigma. Her presence was both a lifeline and a puzzle. Her motives unclear, her loyalty unproven. Henrik struggled between hope and suspicion, torn by the desperate need for answers and the fear of deeper betrayal. Every meeting with her was fraught with tension, each revelation a piece of a complex puzzle that seemed to stretch further than Henrik had imagined. Was she truly an ally, or another player in a game of deceit? The question haunted him, casting a shadow over the fragile progress they had made. But Henrik understood that in their world, trust was a gamble, and sometimes the only way forward was to take that risk. Arthur, sensing the complexity, looked to his father for guidance, their bond a steady anchor amidst uncertain tides. As the days turned to weeks, the bond between Henrik and Arthur deepened, forged in the crucible of shared pain and hope. They were no longer just father and son. They were warriors in a battle for love and truth, a team united against the darkness threatening to consume them. Their story resonated beyond the mansion's walls, touching the hearts of viewers who saw in them their own struggles and dreams. Henrik found solace in the community that grew around their story, a family of strangers bound by empathy and courage. Each comment, each message, was a reminder that they were not alone. Together, they would face whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but with love as their guide, Henrik and Arthur stood ready to face the future, whatever it held. The dawn finally broke through the lingering shadows, bathing the mansion in a soft golden light that seemed to cleanse the wounds of the past and promise a new beginning. Henrik stood by the large window, the city waking beneath him, but his eyes were distant, focused on a future that had once seemed impossible. After months of pain, betrayal, and relentless pursuit of truth, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The woman who had been missing, thought lost to the world and to them, was not gone. She was alive, hidden by necessity, protecting not only herself but the fragile hope of reunion. Henrik's heart pounded as a message arrived. Coordinates, a time, a promise of meeting that would change everything. It was a moment suspended between fear and faith, a fragile thread connecting their fractured family across the void of years and silence. As he prepared to cross that invisible line, Henrik felt a surge of courage fueled by love and forgiveness, ready to face whatever lay beyond. Arthur's eyes shone with a mix of excitement and nervousness, his small hand tightly gripping his father's as they approached the rendezvous. The boy, who had grown from innocent questions into a brave soul shaped by the storm of their past, was about to see the mother he had known only in stories and dreams. The world seemed to hold its breath as the meeting unfolded, a moment heavy with tears, smiles, and the kind of quiet understanding that only true love can forge. The woman, fragile yet fierce, stepped forward, her eyes meeting Arthur's with a tenderness that healed years of absence in an instant. The reunion was not just a coming together of bodies, but a mending of broken hearts, a testament to resilience and the enduring power of love that refuses to be dimmed by time or distance. In that embrace, the past's pain softened, replaced by hope's gentle light. It was the beginning of a new chapter, fragile but bursting with promise. As the three stood together, the mansion no longer felt like a prison but a home reborn from ashes. Henrik looked at the woman who had sacrificed everything for their family. Her story no longer a mystery but a beacon of courage. The secrets they had uncovered, the betrayals they had faced, were now threads in a tapestry woven with forgiveness and strength. The road ahead would not be without challenges, but it was theirs to walk, united and unbroken. Arthur's laughter filled the rooms once silent with doubt, a sound more precious than any treasure. This reunion was a victory, not just against the darkness that had threatened to consume them, but for the love that had held fast, unseen but unyielding. Henrik knew that their story would continue, unfolding in new ways, but the foundation had been laid: truth, love, and the unshakable bond of family. The world outside moved on, unaware of the battles won within those walls, but for Henrik, Arthur, and their mother, life had been irrevocably changed. They had faced the shadows of betrayal and emerged stronger, carrying scars that told stories of survival and hope. The power of forgiveness had transformed their pain into purpose, and the love that had once seemed lost was now a living, breathing force guiding their steps forward. Henrik reflected on the journey, the dark nights, the moments of doubt, the fierce love that refused to fade. He realized that true strength lay not in wealth or power, but in the courage to forgive and the grace to rebuild. Together, they would face whatever storms came next, grounded in a bond forged by sacrifice and nurtured by hope. Their story was far from over, but the darkest chapters had given way to a light that would never be extinguished. In the quiet aftermath, Henrik and his wife began the delicate task of healing, not just their relationship, but the wounds left on their son's heart. They spoke openly, building bridges where walls had stood, teaching Arthur that love could be messy and painful but ultimately beautiful and redemptive. The mansion echoed with new memories, laughter mingling with whispered promises, shared dreams, and the quiet strength of a family reunited. Henrik knew the journey ahead would demand patience and grace, but the foundation was solid, built on truth and unconditional love. Arthur, once a child lost in questions, now faced the future with a courage born from knowing he was loved beyond measure. Their story was a beacon to all who had suffered loss and betrayal, proof that even in the darkest moments, love's light could guide the way home. And now, dear friend, as we close this chapter, remember that your presence here means more than words can say. In every story shared, in every emotion felt, there is a connection, a reminder that none of us walk alone. If this tale moved you, if it stirred your heart or gave you hope, don't forget to hit subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss the next journey we embark on together. Here in this space, your time and attention are treasures, and having you watching our stories will always be an honor. Stay with us because the best stories, those that heal, inspire, and transform, are yet to come.